Transgenderism, homosexuality, any of that filth. And yes, I called it filth. And if you don't like it that I called it filth, come see me and I'll explain it to you.
Yeah, that is Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson, the Republican nominee for governor of North Carolina. I had a hard time picking clips about him. There's so many floating around of his hate and his bigotry and the idea that women, we go back to a time when women shouldn't vote. That's who he is. But you know what? He's not the only lunatic running in that state right now. Here is the woman who is candidate for the superintendent of education. Guess where she was finding herself?
We are here. You guys can see there's a gaggle in front. There's a gaggle behind. We are on our way to the ellipse because that's where our president asked us to come. And we are here to take back America. We are here to stop the steal. We are here to ensure that President Trump gets 4 more years. And we are here to ensure that the United States never becomes a communist country.
Yeah, Michelle Morrow videoing herself at the January 6th riots and the insurrection. She follows QAnon conspiracies. She's called to execute Barack Obama and Joe Biden. And that's who's running for the superintendent of the schools. Not only calling kids mentally retarded. She's a monster. But look, let's not give up on everybody. How can we forget this lady?
Mr. Johnson, you helped lead the efforts to overturn the 2020 election results. Will you
Oh, gosh.
Next question.
Yeah, Virginia Fox, the shut up lady, also from North Carolina. So the Republican Party in North Carolina has become a hurricane of crazy, right? I mean, the Democratic Party in the state has a difficult path ahead of them to defeat these extremists, but they've got a secret weapon and a unique leader of the party, Anderson Clayton. She's an activist and the youngest state party chairman of either party in the entire country. And I've had so many people say, you need to sit down with Anderson right away. So I wanted to get her in the hot seat. So I did. I'm Fred Wellman, host of On Democracy with FP Wellman, right here in the Midas Touch Network. And this is In the Hot Seat with Anderson Clayton. Anderson, my goodness, you are the youngest state party chairman in the country. I'm so thrilled to get hold of you and get you on the Midas Touch Network. I think I said before that everyone I've talked to in North Carolina, related to North Carolina, said, Fred, you got to talk to Anderson Clayton. So thank you for joining us. It's great to have you here on the Midas Touch Network.
It's great to be here, Fred. Thank you so much for the reach out and the opportunity.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, you are now, I think, the youngest state party chairman of any party in the country. You've been an activist since a very young age. I guess the big question is, what drove you into this challenging job, and why did you step up to the plate to take over the party in North Carolina?
I think because I was mad, honestly, Fred, and I might not have the best answer, but it is one that it's a truthful answer. I think that coming out of 2022, North Carolina Democrats had seen a record of losses. We lost our Supreme Court. We almost lost Governor Cooper's veto power. We ended up losing it in 2023 when Representative Tricia Cotham out of Mecklenburg County switched parties. And I think what I've seen in this job is just the opportunity for young people to really cultivate and come into our party in a way like we've never seen before. And so I ran out of anger, but I'm here because of hope and optimism that our party can be better and can be push to have or be more inclusive of young voices and young people in our party, and really making that case for them. And I think why I got involved in politics for the first time, because that's what people, I think, sometimes really ask when they ask that question to me. Republicans took away voting rights on college campuses in 2016. And I was someone from rural North Carolina. I'm from Person County, Roxborough, literally called that because it has a lot of rocks in it, right? Bedrock per se, but it's a small county and it's an R+20 county. It's a Republican county. And I grew up there really thinking that I had to get the hell out of rural North Carolina because it didn't think the way that I did. It didn't accept the people that I did, and it didn't love the people that I did. And I think that, I got into politics in college. Republicans, that trope that they have about college makes people liberal. I'm like, that's true. But it was actually Republicans in college that made me liberal in that way. Because in 2016 in North Carolina, we had a Republican governor that tried to strip away voting sites across all of our college campuses. And I was part of a fight to be able to keep a voting site on our college campus in Watauga County at Appalachian State, where I went to school. And it was the first time I'd ever really gotten involved with politics, but it was a fight to be able to keep the right to vote. And I think right now that's another fight that we're still in and we're still looking at this year when you think about someone like Donald Trump and Mark Robinson and Dan Bishop and people like that who are running for office in North Carolina who would like to fundamentally strip that right from a lot of people in our state.
And that's the battle of the day, isn't it? And I love your story because it does show how it's morphed, and the many aspects to restricting our voting rights, from restricting the locations to saying who can vote where and all those kind of things. And then, of course, the ID laws. It's fascinating to me. But I opened the videos with of some Mark Robinson, as you mentioned, Michelle Morrow, God, Virginia Fox. I interviewed Chuck Hubbard. Matter of fact, Chuck's one of the first people who said to me, "You got to talk to Anderson." You've got a slate of really extreme candidates on the Republican side. That it seems that the Republican Party is really, especially in North Carolina, has taken a very extreme stance as going on. Do you feel like there's a mass madness in your opposing party now, and it's got to be a tough fight?
It is. And I think we should take viewers through a little bit of those folks that you talked about. Mark Robinson is my current lieutenant governor right now, who has said there's a website that you all can go to called realmarkrobinson.com. The state party has created it. And it's got every bit of opposition research that we have on that man for what he has said about any issue that you care about that's on the ballot this year, including public schools. He's attacked our teachers. He's attacked our LGBTQ community. Happy Pride Month, everybody. But there has been a attack against every single either marginalized population or honestly any community that doesn't align with his ideas and his values, right? Which are honestly hating people in this state. And so Mark Robinson is running against Josh Stein, who's running for governor right now. He's our current sitting attorney general in North Carolina. Michelle Morrow, who you mentioned, is running against Mo Green. Mo Green was the superintendent of the third largest school system in North Carolina, Guilford County. And when you look up the #1 high school in the entire country right now, it's a Guilford County school. Wow. And Mo Green is someone that is running for superintendent against Michelle Morrow, who you saw in that little video earlier, that called for the public execution of President Barack Obama, Governor Roy Cooper, and President Joe Biden right now as well. And so someone who thinks more about public execution than public education's got no right teaching our kids, right?
Well put. Yeah, exactly. And then you have the slate of congressional candidates. So you've got a big fight ahead of you. And it seems like you are very aware of that. You've stepped out. One of the things, as you said, you're from a rural county, right? And much North Carolina is rural. People forget that. Mountainous. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous state. One of my favorites to visit. I understand you've been on a rural tour around the state. What are you hearing out there? And what drove you to make sure you're getting out there in the state today?
Well, so to be honest with you, I got elected in February of last year, and I've been bopping around the state ever since. I think this year I decided, because it was an election year, I was going to put a title on what I was doing this time in some ways. But it has really been trying to re-engage. I worked on campaigns, national campaigns, since I graduated college up until 2020. And I think in 2020 and in 2016, we labeled rural America in general as Trump country. And we said, man, that ground is gone from us ever again. And I think right now we are in a political realignment. And in a realignment, that means everybody is up for grabs, which means you go out and you grab everybody and you try to talk to every single voter and you chase after anyone, because everybody is somebody worth talking to in this election cycle. And I think that means we need to chase rural North Carolina. And for the fact that Joe Biden in our state lost North Carolina by 74,000 votes, the reason why we're labeled as an expansion state this year, a battleground state this year, is looking at the fact that he came within a percentage point of winning our state, the closest one in the entire country. And that comes from margins. We used to lose rural North Carolina 60-40. We're losing it right now 80-20. And we've got margins that we need to improve in the state. North Carolina has the second highest rural population than any other state in the country other than Texas right now. Wow. And that's because of our geographical and honestly economic history in sharecropping and manufacturing. We have a huge Eastern or North Carolina population that's heavily majority minority. And then you also have a huge population of Western Democrats that, used to be Democrats in the way of working class, the Democratic Party that fought for workers. And I'm like, we're still that party. And Joe Biden being the first president to walk on a picket line, being the president to say we need to raise the federal minimum wage. I mean, those are the things for us right now. The person that's trying to create a union economy again for fair workers' rights, that's something that we need to be telling everywhere across our state in North Carolina.
That's it. And I've said this too. I spent many years in Virginia the same way, and you can't afford to lose 26 counties by 100 votes, right? So that's the margin, and it is a game of numbers. And I think you're absolutely right. It's wonderful to hear. I live in Missouri now. It's the same sort of thing. We can't just write off entire counties, and if nothing else, getting them engaged. If we don't create more Democrats or engage the ones we have, we won't move forward. So it's wonderful to hear you talk. I'm good friends with Jess Piper, if you know her from my dirt road Democrat Democrat friend, and you're right. I couldn't agree more. That's why I was nodding so fiercely. But by the same token, you do have big issues you're fighting that do affect everybody. I call a lot of these issues supermajority issues, and one of those supermajority issues that we are facing is, of course, women's reproductive rights and abortion. You guys have a very strict law, I think 12 weeks. But what I thought it was interesting about your law, especially, was this two-step process where the woman has to be informed, and there's a lot of information. There's people are afraid of their information being taken, and those kind of things. I mean, it's affecting your medical community. I mean, you have a lot of education institutions. I've read articles about how doctors are afraid to practice there. How is that playing out? And tying that back to the first question about your rural tour, what are you hearing about these rules? And do you think that's going to play a big part of this election?
Yeah, I mean, we're hearing, I think even in our rural communities right now, we're hearing that abortion is an issue that's on the ballot for everyone, and people care about a right being taken away. And I think that's what people need to understand, is that when you think of the United States, you think of the word freedom. And that means freedom to your own body as well. And I think that everyone across our state, especially on our college campuses, I have heard so much this year from college age students about the fact that they care that our state legislature restricted our right to abortion access in 2023. And honestly, even with Governor Cooper, vetoing that bill and Democrats trying to push back because they had, to your point, supermajority power, they overrode his veto. And so we are in a place right now where we can break the Republican supermajority this year in North Carolina and give Josh Stein a veto, or a way to actually hold the veto power with his pen next year and push our state back. North Carolina is the most gerrymandered state in the country, and we have a long game that we're playing in the state to take back and to basically undo that gerrymander, which is going to look at taking back our Supreme Court. We've got one Supreme Court race up this year, Justice Allison Riggs. She's running, she was a Cooper appointee this last year, but she's running for re-election. We've got one Democratic seat up, and then we've got one Democratic seat up in 2026 as well with Justice Anita Earls. But in 2028, we have the ability, what took Wisconsin 12 years could take North Carolina 6, honestly, and we have the ability to take our Supreme Court back in 2028. And that means we repeal racial and partisan gerrymandering. Because one of the reasons why we're doing this rural tour is that, Eastern North Carolina in particular, Western North Carolina in particular, they feel like their votes don't matter. And people feel like their votes don't matter because the state legislature has been sitting there picking their voters the entire last 10 years that Republicans have been in office, instead of letting voters actually pick their representatives. And that's something that we've seen from racial gerrymandering in the state. And I'm hearing it everywhere across on this rural tour of that, people feel like government's not working for them. And we're going in and we're saying, well, you should be asking the question, why the hell not? Because that is government's number one job, is to work for the people of this country, of this state, of this city, of this community. And you should be asking yourselves, why is that not happening? And people need somebody sometimes to come in and tell them that, right? We need to be educated about how our government works.
Yeah, and that's such a big part of it. We have lost that civic education, that understanding of how things work, which takes me to another important question that you're dealing with, the education. We mentioned Michelle Morrow running. I mean, this is a woman who I think in an interview called kids mentally retarded. I mean, and she wants to be, she's anti-school. She's talked about closing it down. She has, I think for you guys, as you mentioned, the guy, Mo Green, who's running as an opposition, you've got people who want to educate children, and you've got someone on the other side who wants to shut public schools down, essentially. I mean, I was thinking as I was preparing for the show that we've really got not just two opposing candidates. You have two opposing visions of what the public schools of your state should be, and how is that playing out? I mean, it seems like it would play out badly in rural states because they need the public schools. There just aren't private schools there anyway. Is public education a major issue?
Thank you, Fred. Hit the nail on the head right there. Is that a lot of our rural communities don't have private schools for,
right.
Republicans have stripped $10 billion over the next 10 years out of our public education system through private school vouchers in North Carolina. A policy that you're seeing, a right-wing policy that you're seeing pop up in states like Florida and Tennessee and Texas and Idaho and Iowa, right? Missouri, right?
Yep.
Places that, people oftentimes, the Democratic Party is like, we're not paying attention to, because they are typically not states that lead to 270. And in my opinion, our party has got to pay attention to the rural component of this. We can't cede ground anywhere, because when we cede it anywhere, they are starting to attack our communities day in and day out. And what populates in those red and rural states comes to our blue and our urban states in different forms and different shapes, right? And so nationalized policy doesn't always impact state policy. And
Right.
we're seeing the underfunding of our schools. Public schools are the number one job provider in a lot of our economic provider, right? In a lot of our rural communities, you're looking at our community college system as the number one economic driver. North Carolina, I tell people all the time, someone looked at me and they said, what do you want when people think of the word Democrat in your state? Like, what do you want somebody to think of? And I was like, education. Education, education, education. Because Democrats in this state were the ones that built our education system.
Yep.
Governor Jim Hunt, who is the longest serving sitting governor in the state of North Carolina, was a Democrat from Eastern North Carolina. He started Smart Start. He started the Teaching Fellows program. They started every early childhood education development that we had in the state that also helped create, the UNC system. We had the first public university in North Carolina, UNC, in the entire country. And that was all founded under Democrats. The Research Triangle took hold here because they attached to the university system, right? And they saw a pathway to build an economy for us. And what used to be the Rip Van Winkle state, right, asleep at the wheel for some people, North Carolina turned into the beacon of the South, the new South, right? Like that envision that people at one point in time had of our state. And I'm like, we're still here. Like that's still there in North Carolina. We just got to make sure we defeat, to your point, the extremism on the ballot this year and elect the experience on the ballot that we have this year with all 10 of our Council of State candidates, our Supreme Court, Joe Biden at the top of the ticket. Because to your point, Fred, earlier, it is two different worlds that we're envisioning right now. And I have young people sometimes tell me, Anderson, I don't know if I'm the most excited to vote this year. And I look at them all the time and I'm like, you are voting for the choice in the world that you want to live in. Do you want compassion and care and empathy and a future that actually gives a shit about you, or do you not? Because that is what you're voting for this year in so many ways.
That's why everyone wanted me to get you on the show. I can see why. And you're right. And it is a vision, and it's not conservative. It's blowing budget holes in our state governments. And so you've got a heck of a fight, and that fight matters. And I'm thrilled to see that you're in it and out there and about. And with that, the most important question we always ask in the hot seat is, how can we help? The Midas Touch viewers are generous and helpful. Where should they go to find out more about what you're doing, Anderson, and more that they can support your party and what you're trying to accomplish in North Carolina?
Yeah, they can go to ncdp.org. It's our state party's website. We are knocking doors right now every single weekend in North Carolina. We are phone banking every week in North Carolina. If you would like to get involved in any way, shape, or form, please go to ncdp.org and help us do that. Also, again, if you've got friends and family, if you're listening and you're a viewer from way out there and you ain't in North Kakalaki right now, realmarkrobinson.com is a website that if you just spread it around and let people know who this man is, and the fearful thing that we have in North Carolina right now and that we're up against this year, because we also want to give people the opportunity to know what they can do about it. So just thank you for this, Fred. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and it matters. I mean, as you mentioned, this is a state that matters this election for Joe Biden and for the whole country. And on top of that, who you've got running at the state level. So I'm thrilled to have you here. Thanks for taking time for us. Man, I enjoyed talking to you. I'm going to check in with you again. Hope we talk some more. And the best of luck out there. Man, I was sitting there talking to her. I thought to myself, I should have had her on the main show. 45 minutes wouldn't be enough to talk to Anderson. What a brilliant leader with the right positive energy that we need. And boy, does she nail it there at the end, right? The fact is, North Carolina is such an important state. There's a reason we're looking at it as a swing state. There's a reason we're looking at it as being in play for President Biden and the Democratic Party. So check them out. Follow those websites. I've looked at that website. It's not only fascinating, but also hilarious. Mr. Robinson's a very dangerous man. With having said that, we'll be doing a lot more of these. As you can see, it's ramping up. I'm getting a lot of calls. Folks want to come join us. They want to meet you guys, the Midas Mighty. So stay in tune. As always, I am Fred Wellman, host of On Democracy with FP Wellman. New shows every Friday night at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific. Can't wait to see you. In the meantime, keep up the fight.